You could feel it, even if you didn't have words for it yet. You've been waiting for them to be judged or to say they were sorry, them and anyone who saw it. But they won't. And that's not what you needed. You needed confirmation. Welcome back to God is My Guru. The version of God you were given required something from you. It wasn't honesty or truth. It required you to disappear. Let me explain. The trap works like this. You were rewarded for compliance, but compliance required suppressing what was real in you. It was someone using your powerlessness to suppress the real you, the one with questions, with resistance, and with a different read on the room. And then something shifted. You stopped complying, and they noticed. When you pushed back, you finally existed in a way that mattered. The environment that ignored what was seen and left it unspoken started reacting to you. So your nervous system learned something it was never meant to learn. Complying means going under the radar, pretending meant surviving, and rebelling was existing. Something inside of you was being erased. The rules were set against you, and being you seemed to never be enough, so you changed the game. To rebel meant being seen. What do you do with the part of you that never stopped loving God, even while you were walking away from everything that was done in His name? If they said that this was His organization or church or community, and those inside would be saved, did leaving mean losing Him? Does He still hear you? Is He disappointed like they were? That fear is honest, but it's not the truth. Your resistance was not sin. It was correct perception. You saw what was actually there. And the God you were still reaching for underneath all of it, He never left. He was never on their side. He couldn't have been on the side of what required you to disappear. Jonah ran from God directly, not from a system, not from a church, but from God Himself. Paul spent years actively working against everything he would later give his life to build. Neither of them was rejected for it. God went after Jonah, and Jesus stopped Paul on the road. The distance they put between themselves and God did not change what came next. Without the performance, without the management, without the careful calibration of what was safe to show, who were you? If you were never shown how to just be loved for you as you are, you adapted to the picture they wanted to see. Being a child who sees clearly in a blind crowd is a lonely feeling, but it hardens your conviction. For years, though, you stayed quiet and complied. So when you finally rebelled, you discovered the only posture that ever made you feel alive and seen. You figured out that everyone around you was just playing a role. You noticed the silent rule. Don't break the illusion. Don't ask the hard question. Stay inside the line. And you knew if you pointed it out, they would deny it. So you stopped talking. That was the only smart move in an environment that punished anyone who saw clearly. I always say that truth vibrates in a frequency only the heart can hear. You felt like you were outside something that everyone else seemed to be inside. Not because you were broken, but because you could see what they had agreed not to look at. We're naming this not to stay here, but because you cannot walk towards something clearly while this is still running underneath. As a child, all you knew was that seeing clearly did not protect you, that the crowd's blindness and their silence amounted to the same thing, as if acknowledging it would break down their religion, as if your truth would shame the whole congregation. Instead of justice, you had to pretend everything was fine, to keep up a facade so their world would not break down, and no one dealt with the fact that your world was already broken. Some of them saw as well. Some of the adults, they saw it too. Some of them saw and said nothing, stayed out of it, kept their heads down, let it continue. And in the worst cases among you out there, you were accused of lying, held under the influence of the devil, while the real devil was patted on his back, supported. And then, because the system did not stop and no one stepped in, you concluded, if he exists and he saw this and he said nothing, then either he's not good or he's not real. But you missed something. You missed that the understanding of how it feels to know something no one can see is the very foundation of a real, true believer. That part was you standing in your integrity, knowing the truth, what was real. Truth cannot be destroyed. Truth has nothing to hide. That is a witness compiling evidence, not the end of belief, but a reasonable conclusion of what you actually saw. It means that inside you, you already had the tools to evaluate a situation correctly, even when the outside gave you nothing to confirm it. Seeing clearly in a blind crowd is not a new kind of loneliness. It has a name and it has a history. Noah preached for 40 years to people who thought he was describing something that had no category in their world. A flood, a boat, a God who would do something none of them had seen before. They did not take him seriously. They did not see what he saw. And he kept building. Even in today's crazy world, it would be considered crazy. And then the door closed. God shut him in. And for 7 days, nothing moved. He had been taken for a fool for 40 years. The people who had mocked him could still walk past. The world outside still looked exactly as it always had. Except for the door to the ark closing, nothing visible had changed yet. 7 days of nothing. Maybe you have waited years to be proven right. That is how right you knew you were, and you stayed in that conviction. The same God who asked Noah to stay with it when nothing was moving, when the evidence had not yet arrived, when everyone outside still had reason to doubt. That is the same God this series is asking you to look at again. Not the version you were handed, the real one in the Bible. And here's what Noah knew that the crowd didn't. The structure was never the point. The relationship with God was. God doesn't need religion. Religion needs God. You don't need a pastor or a building or a performance to reach him. Jesus is the way to the Father. Praying in his name is enough. Where 2 or more are gathered in my name, there I will be with them. 2 or 3 people talking about him, even in a group chat, even online, he's there. You don't have to rush toward God. You don't have to pretend you're ready before you are. He sees your heart, not your attendance, not your compliance, not whether you sat still long enough or said the right words at the right volume. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus says, when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Away from the audience, away from the eyes that measure, compare, and judge. Behind a closed door where no one can evaluate the length, the volume, or the sincerity of your words. That is not a suggestion. It's a dismantling of performance religion. He knew what people would do with prayer. He knew it would become a platform, a show, a way to be seen. So he relocated it. Locked room, no witnesses. You can talk to him about anything. Your doubts, your fears, your hurts, silently in your head. He will hear you. If you're not ready to invite him closer, that is allowed. He does not force his way in. He will wait. And if you cannot pray out loud, if the situation you're in makes that impossible or unsafe, or just too much right now, the silence in your head is enough. He hears what cannot be spoken. The moment after a significant break, after leaving, after saying no for the first time, after stopping something that was costing you everything. Let's call that the ark moment. The door closes behind you and then nothing. Silence. A world that looks exactly the same as it did before, except you're standing in a completely different place inside it. Your brain starts to panic in that silence. It rewrites the past. It reaches for the familiar, even the familiar that hurt you, because at least that felt real. It's what you were used to. The brain looks for someone to tell you that you made the right call. That is not weakness. That is what a human brain does when the feedback loop goes quiet. Standing in that silence can sometimes feel like Noah after the door closed. So the silence after the door closes often feels like, I made a mistake, even when you didn't. Your brain is calibrated to what was normal, not what was true. You're not losing your mind. You're building something you didn't know you needed. The people who required your silence, your performance, your forced compliance, and told you it was for God were not aligned with what He actually said. The system needed you small. That is how it stayed in control. But the God in this text has nothing to protect, nothing to defend, and no position that your questions could threaten. Which means the demand that you disappear, that was never from Him. It couldn't have been. So we established that what the religious system you were in required of you and what God requires of you are not the same thing, and that you felt the difference between them. You always knew, something was wrong. And yes, you can trust that feeling. What was done in God's name was wrong, and no, it was not invisible to Him. But part of faith is living in the delay, because human beings want two different things from God at the same time. We want Him to act immediately against evil, when we are the ones being harmed. But when we are the ones who failed, suddenly we're grateful He is patient, grateful He does not crush us at our worst moment. That tension exists in almost everyone. Justice and forgiveness are not the same thing. Eye for an eye in the Old Testament was originally about limiting vengeance, not encouraging cruelty. In the ancient world, retaliation could spiral endlessly. You injure me, I kill you. Your family kills mine, and it never stops. Eye for an eye established proportion. The consequence should match the harm, not exceed it. It restrained revenge and put judgment into a legal framework instead of personal rage. But forgiveness addresses something different. What happens inside the human heart after harm occurs? Justice asks, what is fair? Forgiveness asks, will this poison own me forever? And here's what forgiveness is not. It's not pretending evil was acceptable. It's not removing all boundaries. It is not canceling consequences. It is not trusting dangerous people again. Biblically, forgiveness is not the erasure of reality. You can forgive someone and still tell the truth, still leave, still testify, still set boundaries, still involve authorities, still never trust that person again. Even God in the biblical narrative forgives people while still allowing consequences to stand. Forgiveness is not blindness. Justice is not hatred. Boundaries are not lack of love. And carrying anger forever does not keep you safe. It keeps you connected to the thing that hurt you. It takes energy to hold it all the time. And when you finally loosen your grip on it, even a little, something else starts to appear underneath it. Space, quiet, peace. I know, I lived it. And if you left or were pushed out, I want to say something about what came after. Your reaction to what happened to you was normal. What you did afterward was a normal human response to an abnormal amount of pressure. The anger, the contrast seeking, the wrong people, the familiar pain that found you in places wearing different faces. None of that was depravity. It was a person with a navigation system trying to find ground. The world outside, the one they told you was dark and lost and without standards, you may have found what others have found. That people who never opened the Bible still knew you don't betray a friend, still showed up, still had limits, just honest ones, not weaponized ones. A book can be a guide, or it can become something people hit each other with instead. You were not wrong to notice the difference. He doesn't want the compliant version. He doesn't want the refusing version. He wants the person underneath both. The one who is kind and also complicated, loving and also wild, who does not need to manage anyone's reaction to know they are real. You don't have to put on that costume anymore that you wore to survive. You, the one who saw clearly when the room was blind, the one who went quiet to stay intact, the one who is still in there underneath everything the system required, and everything you did to get free of it. That is who he's addressing, not the version of you that learned to survive inside of religion, not the version that finally broke free from it, the one underneath both, the one that was always there, watching, knowing, waiting to be spoken to directly. That is who this is for. You know by now that the part of you that resisted, that saw the gap and went quiet to survive, that part was not broken. Because something in you still recognized that love and fear were being fused together in a way that did not feel true. Something in you still reacted to the contradiction. That reaction was not the absence of conscience, it was the evidence of it. But resistance alone doesn't make us whole, because human beings can recognize something is wrong and still move toward it anyway. You can know something is damaging you and still return to it. You can recognize the gap and still choose what pulls you away from yourself. So, what is that? What is the voice that says, go anyway, just this once? No one will know. And why do human beings so often move against what they already know? That's where this turns. I'll see you in the next episode.